Hey everybody, welcome back. Today I'm going to do a request video. I've never done one of these before, but one of the subscribers had requested that I kind of review and go over the vise that I'm assuming which vise he was referring to. So I'm just going to go ahead and go over all the vices that I have and kind of what I like and dislike about them. What I would have done differently if I were to build it again, things of that nature. And that's what I'm referring to as the vices on my on the workbench that I built. So, without further ado, I think that this main face vise is the vise that the subscriber was referring to. And I gotta say, because I think the main question was, he said, "Hey, I'm looking at building a vise similar to this with a large, chop, so to speak." So it doesn't. It's a woodworking vise, right? But as you can tell, this is the normal vise. The metal section that you see is the original vise, and that's what most people mount on their bench, and that's what you normally see. In fact, this little flip right here is for basically a single version of these two dog holes with dogs in it. It obviously, when you build it this large, this becomes pointless, so you have to improvise. So I just drilled in some holes here for some dogs, and that's what I use as my dogs. But as you can see, it's much larger. You have much more real estate that you're dealing with when you make your own vise chops. There's a couple of different reasons I went this way. I guess the first obvious one is that you get more bang for your buck. You build your own chops, and now you have you're dealing with the fact that you get to choose the size, right? So instead of going with whatever I'm dealt with what I buy, I just built one. I built the vise chops to fit my needs. A lot of the stuff that I work with is larger stuff, almost timber framing style stuff. So I figured let's build some vices that can handle some larger stuff, right? I handle a lot of smaller stuff too, and this handles the small stuff just as well. So it works great either way. Some of the things that I like and dislike, I think what honestly, I've been using this for quite some time now. I'm gonna try and set it down. This right here, this gap, it works for me. Helps me get a little bit more purchase on the wood especially if I have a piece coming up from the ground. It's a longer piece. I'm trying to do ingrain or something like that. I have a little bit more bite on the wood. But in reality, it would work probably just as fine if I just chopped it off level with the bottom of the vise. If I just chopped it off right here, it would be, I think, just as good. This might help a little bit with the dampening of maybe a saw cut or something of that nature, but yeah, I don't think this part's necessary, really. I do like, I'm good with the thickness. I think maybe I would have gone a little bit thicker with this chop. It hasn't caused me any problems, so I think you'd be fine with doing it that way. just choose the right wood, right? This is ash, so it's meant to be, it's a good sturdy wood. And looking at the shop that we have right now reminds me of something else that that I paid attention to when I decided which chop to mount where. And if you've guessed it already, great for you. But it's the annual rings, right? So the annual rings tell us a lot about how the wood is going to how it's going to stabilize, what it's going to do when it as it dries, as it matures in a dead state, if you will. I got something in my throat. I put the rings where they are like this and opposite on the other side because as this, right, so if imagine this particular side right here, the rest of the tree would have been out here, right? So when you cut it, it wants to naturally go from around, and then you cut it down the middle, and it wants to open up. Now that it can, it will, right? So I wanted it, if it was going to flex any measurable amount, if it was going to start cupping or whatnot, I wanted it to cup towards itself, right? So that you still had that bite up at the top, and then when you close it, you still get the tension that you're looking for because the wood has enough flex in it. I would caution if you're going to, I forgot the subscriber's name, but you know who you are. If you're going to build this, don't go too high with your chops. I mean, where you mount this to the bottom of your bench is going to have a lot to do with where the top of your actual vise ends up, and that's going to, the thickness of your bench is going to determine really how tall this is. But just be careful. If it gets too tall because your bench is too thick, you might want to look at a different design, putting maybe some metal in there somewhere to give it more strength and rigidity. I don't foresee a problem with this, but that's mainly because it's been plane sawn, right? If this was quarter sawn wood, that's great for a lot of things, but not for a chop, because I'm putting a lot of pressure right here, right along that top edge. A lot of it I never go past a couple of inches, right? So there's going to be a lot of flex on this, and so much more than it is down here, that if I didn't have grain, the structure of the wood wasn't the way it is, then I might be afraid of it actually like snapping off this whole top corner, cracking, and then eventually I'd have to replace the chop. So be careful of the height. I love the size. I don't think I would be as happy with just this size of a vise, just the metal section. It's just, I don't know, it's just too small for me. I love this big meaty vise. It gives me everything that I need. And here's something else that I kind of worked into the design, because it's kind of the way the vise itself works. But as you can tell, I'm fully clamped down. Now I've softened the edges so it looks like there's a gap there, but there's not. But there is this tiny gap down here at the bottom, right? That's like that so that it ensures that the top of the vise is going to pinch before the bottom of the vise. I mean, that wouldn't make any sense to have a longer piece and then it grabs down here, and then you go to saw something and you have nothing but shatter up here because there's no contact between the vise jaws, the vise chops, right? This, if I was to do it again, I would probably, I love this vise, don't get me wrong, but I would love to have a quick release vise, something I could just lift the lever or do whatever and bring it all the way in and out without having to do, go through the motions of twisting it all the way in and out. But realistically, that's kind of, it's neither here nor there. It's just fine using it this way. If you want to see how I mounted this, how I built it and mounted it and everything, there's plenty of detailed videos in there. You just click on 2 times the speed and it'll give you the same stuff at twice the speed. So I know my videos are long and drawn out and whatnot, so hopefully that helps out a little bit. I liked this so much that I kind of took what I didn't like, not that I didn't like, but what was not necessary, from right here and chopped that off when I made this vise, right? Try and set this on my toolbox. So this is another vise, the small metal vise that I made. I basically made a piece of 2-ply plywood, if you will, out of 2 pieces of 3/4 inch cherry. But this works out. This works out great for all my little metal projects and whatnot. It's not too big, it's not too small, but if you're going to be working on metal, you don't want to necessarily mount it in your wood vise because it's going to damage your wood jaws, right? But it's really simple device, and I'm sure I have another video somewhere on this vise, but this is what I did, right? So I just countersunk the holes in to receive these bolts. I think they're 1/2 inch 13 bolts, and this here is basically mortise and tenon up into. I want to say it goes further than the halfway mark. So it's about 3/4 of the way up this chunk of wood, this laminated chunk right here. And I also have 2 dowels that run straight through the middle of it, right up in here, that go down into to give it more solid rigidity. So there you go, and it's glued in too. So, and then you have to work with a little bit, but do what you can to get it flat. It doesn't have to be perfect. Mine's really super close, so I just do that, and then as you saw, it pops up a little bit when I tighten down, so I still got to tweak the tenon sticking out. But all you do is tighten it down real tight, and you got yourself a nice sturdy metal vise. Be careful about where you mount it, right? So like, I can loosen up this other side and swivel it around, right? And I was paying attention to that now it wants to stick. I was paying attention to that when I made this piece and how I was actually going to mount it to the board. And just took that into account. This is I need to work it a little bit, get some grease up in there. But it works great for all my little metal stuff. I can, if you hang it over far enough, you can turn your handle and it'll come in and out and whatnot. And this particular one's got nice little jaws. I think they're only like maybe 3 inches, 3.5 or something like that. 3.5 inch jaws. And I've got pipe jaws right here for round stock. And they work perfect for metal work. It's also got a teeny tiny anvil on it. Not that I would use it for any big stuff, but it's got a little anvil here, and it actually has a little hole at the top for a cutoff hardy, like a little pitchel that you can use it there. It's basically for like a hot cutoff. And then I just drilled this hole. I can stick that in and kind of stow it there. When you don't want the vise, you just loosen up your other wood vise, and you pull it out and do whatever you want with it. And so this one, this vise, I kind of, I just basically went from the bottom of the guide rails. So I went from the bottom of the guide rails up to the top of the bench, and that was what determined this height. But as you can see, when you look at it from here, I still got that extra width and the thickness. Now I rounded this off, which was a little bit different from the other one, because the other one I actually beveled it, and it turned out nice. But I went with a different shape on the finish here on the edges. And this particular, as you can see too, I also left the rings where it would flex into the inner chop. So pay attention to that when you're doing it, so that it'll help you out. You know, not to break so easy, I guess. But the chops on this vise are made out of red oak. The other one is made out of ash. Both are good and strong woods. They're both hardwoods. They're both meant for things like this, so you can use them for things like this. I haven't had a lot of use out of this. I have used it, but not as much as my main vise, for obvious reasons. But a lot of that has to do also with the fact that I'm still in a small space, and I'm like, from here to the wall is less than 2 feet. So I don't have a whole lot of room, and plus my little chip container over there where I put all my chips at the end of the day is kind of hogging up a lot of real estate over there as well. This is the exact same vise, and I sandblasted this whole vise down to nothing, greased it up. I ended up having to machine this one part right here because it busted when I was rehabbing it. So I made this piece myself in the machine shop, and it works just fine. Everything functions exactly the way it's supposed to. And yeah, one thing you're going to notice, especially if you go to make your own and you watch the videos, the drawn out videos, you don't use really any of the mounting holes on the vise that come with the vise. You end up, don't drill into the vise itself. You have to basically mount it around the vise, so it goes down both sides and across the top. And they're just long wood screws, and they hold it just fine. So that's enough of that. If you'll look, this vise is meant to be worked with dogs. Just putting my other vise back. So this is meant to be worked with dogs. Now I started out, and I have a video or two, I'm sure, about making wooden dogs, but I picked up a set of these aluminum dogs with sprung. They have little sprung wire on them, and these are 4-inch tall dogs. They have a little bit of knurling there, some checkering to give it a little bit of bite if you want it. But it's pretty smooth, so it's not going to really damage your wood. I guess you could put leather on there, if you wanted to have a softer touch to something. But I found that the wooden ones were too crude and too sticky. I guess is probably the best word to use. And they were kind of inconsistent. Because when you drill holes by hand in your bench, it's very... I don't know, you're going to have different, depending on what wood it is and how, even the age of the different kind of the same wood, right? So this is all Doug fir, but it's not like I got each plank out of the same tree, right? So each plank, this might be a quicker growing, fast growing fir, and this one here I can see has quite a few rings on it, so it was probably a much older fir. So this is going to be, and that's why I made it my skirt, but this is going to be much, in my opinion, I don't know the science behind it, but this is going to be much better wood, but it's also going to be a tighter tolerance, right? When you start getting into this, like this wood right here, I don't like this section, but I really didn't have a whole lot of options when I built the bench, so I went ahead and put it in anyway. But you can see the growth rings. You may not be able to see it. Well, the growth rings are really far apart from one another. That means it grew really, really fast. And that's not good for woodworking, because then you have a lot of that softer wood in there. And when you drill, it's going to give you, what's the word I'm looking for? Inconsistencies in your hole. It's going to start wanting to close in on you in certain parts. And so these dogs, I don't remember who makes them. Maybe Veritas or Woodcraft sells them. One of the major places sells these things. And they're not expensive. I think for 4 of them I paid like, I don't know, maybe 20 bucks, something like that. It's not really a whole lot of money. For an investment, you know, these will be with me for the rest of my life. I mean, they're aluminum, for crying out loud. But another thing that I have problems with the wooden dogs is they cracked. Even though I had the grain running against whatever I was, you know, so I had the strength of the grain instead of it wanting to split on me or bend out, flex on me. The grain was going this way as I was pressing against the wood, but it still cracked. A couple of them cracked. So I went ahead and got these. And these are smaller than the hole a little bit. And then you have these sprung wires that keep the tension on. And so they just slide right in like butter. Every single time, every single hole. And to kind of demonstrate, I guess, this isn't a perfect demonstration, but I'm going to use my planing board. This is the board that I use for my setting my plane irons after I sharpen them. But you would essentially go lower than your board. Now, I can't go any lower with this. Well, I can actually get lower. But I have the vise under here, so I'm looking at getting a few shorter dogs for this particular board. If I go anything under the 3/4 minimum or maximum, I guess. But so you get your board in there, and then you just squeeze it between the 4 dogs. Now I didn't even put a whole lot of pressure on it. And it's not going to go anywhere, really. And then you can just plane away. This Wood River plane, man, I love it. Taking a real fine shaving, or you can take a big chunky one. Kind of going against the grain in those spots, so that's enough of that. But you get the idea. And of course, you know, I use this a lot for without the dogs, just setting it up and running with the edging, you know, playing the edge of the board. And yeah, you get the idea. So that's that. You can go this way, but then you're limited on obviously length. That is when you would go over here to this guy. And I'll explain the dog hole system briefly on this one. So if I wanted to do a longer board, this is just a piece of scrap I have laying around, but if I wanted to do a longer board, I just simply grab my longer piece, and I have this dog hole system here that goes all the way up to here, right? And so that would give me the way as far out as I have it drilled right now, with my vise extended all the way out. And you can see my dimensions in a different video. But from one dog to the other, you're looking at a distance of exactly 38 inches. So a little more than 3 feet in between dogs. And I have a little bit strange dogging system here. For a board that's skinny like this, you know, it's not a real wide panel or anything. Then I can just, you know, I find which dog puts my vise closest to when it's closed, closest to the bench. And that's the one I'm looking for right there. And I just use a simple 1-2 punch here, one at either end. And I butt it up. And I go to town. This one is all set up for just a 2 or 3 point of contact dogging system, where the other side, the main vise, is set up for a 4 point or a 2 point. But this one has the dog hole here, so I can go 1, 2, 3, or I can just go 1 in 1. So if I wanted to do a wider board, like say this piece of plywood here, this is called Euro ply. This will be the piece that I'm making my shooting board out of. But I can simply get 1, 2, a dog in either side, and then one more dog, go right in the middle. And I need to move it up one. Let's see how easily this system moves around. So there, I now have a good, my dog's messing with me. I have a good solid chunk of plywood, Euro ply in this case, mounted to the table, the bench, and ready for work. I'm really stoked about how all of the vices turned out on this bench. It offers many different ways of clamping your work. There's really, and if you don't have one of these, grab it. They work great. And that is a saw sharpening vise, or some kind of jig that you can stick into a regular face vise that you can clamp up to your saw plate with. But this is as simple as, I'll do a real quick demonstration and you can kind of understand why it looks and is the way it is. You get it like that so that you just clamp down. Now, I'm not doing it perfect here, but you just clamp down on your saw plate and you can file away, and it's rigid right next to the teeth, and you won't have all of that chatter. Another great thing about a specific vise like this is it's got a socket joint, and so you just loosen it up, and I can move this in any direction I want that's comfortable for me, right? So any way I want to work this, I can do that, right? This is awesome. Awesome piece of ingenuity here, and it mounts directly to my tool well, the bottom of my tool well. So yeah, if you don't have one of these, pick them up. They're not too expensive. You can find them all over the place on eBay, and you can find them at auctions. You can find them a lot at swap meets. You know, they're all over. They may not be as nice as this one, but you can find them. And as you can see on the table behind me, I still got all the pieces and parts for my post drill. I was going to, and I'm still trying to find a longer post, but I'm having a hard time finding the exact size. It's 1 inch 680 thousandths. So, and this is what rides up and down on that thing, and it's made out of cast, so it's cast steel, so there's not going to be much flex in this at all. It will fit in the caps, on the top and bottom caps, but this slides up and down that post, so it needs to be very, very close. So I still gotta find a source for that, because I don't have machines readily available to me, a lathe readily available to me at work anymore, right now anyways. But when my old ship gets back, I'll probably just go over there and use their machine shop and cut me down a piece that'll work. I'm going to end up going with a 2.5 footer. Right, this is not, so it'll end up being about that long when it's said and done. It'll be about twice as long as the head of the chuck that I'm going to put on it. So we got some good variety there, some more options. I'll be able to put larger work in it than it was originally designed for, and obviously I'll be able to get the link back that I lose going to a keyless chuck, adding that Jacob style chuck to it, and that'll be a good thing. So to the guy that requested this video, long and drawn out in typical fashion, hope that answered any questions that you have. I absolutely love the vises. I can't really say that I would change anything. If I wanted to change something, I probably would have already. There's not really anything that I can think of that I would do differently. If I build, when I build, I can say if. When I build another bench, I'm going to go with probably a different vise setup. I wanted this vise because these are so universal and so easy to get a lot of just general, and that's what this bench is going to end up being. It's not going to be my fine woodworking table or bench or anything like that. It's simply built for general purpose, beat it up, get things done on it. It's going to be flat and true and nice and all that stuff, but it's not, it's not a $5,000 workbench. I mean, this workbench cost me, I don't know, less than $200 in tools and materials. Minus the vises. I think the vises together were probably, I don't know, $100, something like that. But, or less, I can't remember. But I absolutely love the vises. I wouldn't change a thing on the way they're built or the way that they're set up or what they're made out of, except for maybe making them something I would advise for you, making them a little thicker. What I did, instead of going with a thicker wood, try to show this. Probably better this way. You can see, right, it's a little tough because there's a bevel here, but I made the hole, the distance between this edge of the hole and the edge of the vise is much smaller, about half the distance that this is. So this is where the meat needs to be to withstand the flex. So I put more meat in that one side of the vise. If I didn't address something, let me know. I'll hit it up real quick in the next video. I have made a lot of progress. I'm just not quite done with some other projects, so I'm going to be doing some woodworking on those. So those videos will be coming out soon. Not to be in suspense or anything. I'm not trying to do that, but I restored, as I may have said in previous videos, but I restored a what I think was a really good find of a treadle stone, a treadle grindstone. The kind you sit down and you pedal back and forth, and it's got the big sandstone that turns. I broke it down. Every last piece was taken apart. All the corrosion was removed. It was primed and painted after I cleaned it off with a mineral spear, like a xylene, and let it all dry out real good. Primed it, painted it, and reassembled it last 2 weekends ago. I spent this last weekend doing nothing but cutting and chopping wood for the winter, but I still have to make the base and the drip tray that goes underneath the stone for that, and then obviously I need to make a base for the post drill. So those are the two major pieces that I need to make still, and that'll be wrapping up those two major products. So I'll have projects. So I'll have a fully restored Acme post drill, and that's going to be awesome. And I'll have the fully restored, it's already functional, I just don't have the drip tray underneath it, the grindstone, fully restored grindstone. And I'll do demos and everything of that nature when the time comes. And until then, keep woodworking, keep doing some blacksmithing, keep doing whatever it is that you love to do, keep doing it. And I'll see you on the next video. Friends and family, I love you. Everyone else, I'll see you next time.